Oh hi, I'm Andre, Solutions Engineer at PDFTron, and today I'm going to talk to you about PDFs. I'm going to take you on a journey that every developer has to go through when it comes to enabling PDF document viewing, editing, annotation inside of a web application. What I did is I went through and evaluated the most popular libraries out there, put together a GitHub repository, how to get started with each one of them, and some of the things to look out for when it comes to working with those PDF libraries. I'm kind of comparing their strengths and weaknesses, pros and cons of each one. Now, I'll try to stay as unbiased as possible since I do work for Pdftron, and at Pdftron, we know PDFs fairly well. We emerged right around the same time as PDF specification came about 20 years ago and implemented our own proprietary rendering engine as well as low-level PDF editor and cross-compiled on a number of different platforms, including web, mobile, and server-side SDKs. Now, I'm super excited to present at DeveloperWeek. Just a heads up, this session is pre-recorded. I did that because just based on the sheer amount of content that I wanted to present to you, and I wanted to make myself available to you just in case if you have any questions in the live chat. All right, here we go. Now, when it comes to PDF and document requirements, the users, the customers, the clients we're working with, they always kind of like to save it till the last moment. And they're like, oh, and by the way, we have to enable PDF viewing, or PDFs are a major part of our document workflow, or we have a kind of file storage with tons of different PDFs on it. So as such, those requirements kind of left till the last moment, and then we have to deal with it. Here's the couple of different choices that we have. We could just kind of go ahead and let them download or open the PDF in a new tab. After all, there's no work required, nothing involved from our side. And that's a pretty good option, like when we're really strapped for time, we need to roll out the project. But, later on, we're going to start hearing some complaints. And some of it is that we can't really control or enforce kind of any document retention policies on the file. So the user kind of goes ahead and kind of downloads the file to their computer. We can't really say, hey, could you actually go ahead and delete that and from your recycling bin? So again, like if we're dealing with some sensitive content, that's not really a good option. And if the document does have sensitive information on it, confidential, maybe personally identifiable information, any health-related information on it, the PDF security, just putting a password on it is not enough. When we're kind of letting the users download or open PDF in a new tab, we can't really control what they're going to use to open those PDF documents. So as such, the rendering of the content is going to be different across different browsers. So for example, Google Chrome uses kind of built-in Pdfjs, and then Mozilla Firefox uses Pdfgs, and other browsers kind of use a different combination of the two. And then again, on the desktop, we've got Adobe Reader, we've got a number of other readers. And again, because there's one PDF specification to kind of govern how the PDF format should look and feel, unfortunately, everybody implements it or interprets in their own way. And then let's say we had some kind of collaboration on the document and the users kind of placed any comments or annotation on top of the document. Well, not always those are going to be shown at the end, especially if we're using kind of different PDF viewers out there. So, it might look like a good option to kind of get started with, just like, okay, just download or open a new tab. We will not worry about the PDF experience within our app, but later on might actually come back to bite us. From user experience studies found that users might actually get lost in the whole experience. Like if we bounce them off to a new tab, they might not necessarily find their way back to the application that they're in. Creating a viewer from scratch, like the pros here is that you're starting a PDF company, and if you implement all of the PDF specification, you might be quite successful. Process of implementing your own viewer is that the PDF specification is just so broad, and PDF is such a crazy format where you can have a PDF within a PDF through File Attachment API. You can have images, videos, embeddable content. You can even have 3D models that are stored inside of PDF. Like reading through the PDF specification, figuring out how much of it you want to implement. That's where it gets really tricky. You have to not only account for the kind of PDFs that are properly following the PDF specification, but also all the PDFs that are not following PDF specifications and are poorly generated. And then there's kind of the third option, right? Leverage an existing viewer. And there are just so many different options out there. Part of this kind of talk or kind of demonstration or repository is to evaluate like a number of different viewers and renderers that I picked, and kind of some of the things that you got to look out for. So is rendering consistent between browsers? How much time and effort is going to take you to embed it inside of a web app? Does the viewer support annotation, or is it something you got to build out? Does it conform to the PDF specification? And does it like fit into your application styling? If not, how easy it is to go and style it? Does it even have an UI? Do you have to build a UI? Does it have a support team? Like if your users come back and they're like, hey, we've got this PDF file that's not rendering properly, can you have someone to talk about your PDF prompts? So what I did, I went through the pain of diving into most popular PDF rendering and viewer library. I do have experience working with kind of PDFTron's web viewer, but I tried to kind of forget as much as possible, have a very fresh look, and someone how would be starting. So I put it together. What I did is for every single one, I just created a very basic React app, and just seeing how easy it is just to kind of throw it into a component and test out with some of the PDFs. Okay, so the first one we're going to take a look at is React PDF. So React PDF is pretty popular, has a lot of downloads on the NPM. So what I've done here, and this is kind of like a guide how to use this repository, you can head on over kind of to the specific project or sample that you want to take a look at. And as you can see, it's a very basic React app that you can also in your terminal kind of navigate to. So React PDF sample, my PDF app, and after that you can just hit npm start. Everything is already pre-installed and the sample file should render it out. So I'm going to walk you through kind of what's happening here. So we have installed React PDF library. We importing kind of document page and the Pdfgs rendering engine that actually uses underneath. So after that, we're just kind of creating some variables, again, according to the documentation where we're tracking the number of pages. We're also tracking the current page number that the user is on. This was like a pretty common gadget. You got to set up and point your Pdfgs kind of worker and point it to an address where it's hosted so it can kind of pull it in and initialize properly. And then we have kind of function on document load success. It's kind of like a callback that gets called, and then we setting the number of pages, removing text layer offset. So that was another common gotcha that when you first install it and kind of run, the layer is going to be misshifted a little bit. But don't worry, there is an issue from 2019, and Niconet actually saved the day with a fix. So I kind of applied this fix. So the fix, what it entails is just simply, kind of every time for every text layer, you kind of shifting it to align with the canvas where the page is kind of rendered out onto. So let's go ahead and take a look. So it's now running inside of our browser, and we can see it at localhost 3000. So as you can see here, it renders our sample document. What I'm able to do, I'm able to switch pages. Again, so React PDF doesn't really have any UI. So it's just again, it grabs Pdfjs library, which is built by Mozilla, and we're going to take a look next. And it wraps it inside of a component and provides a very nice kind of component, a React component to work with, where we can just kind of import it. And then after that, we do have to build out our own UI on top of it. Now, some of the things that are already kind of built for us is selection. As you can see, it's not ideal, and it does kind of flash, and for some reason, it just kind of selects all of the document. And yeah, it's just not the best experience, but hey, if we need to get it in our app pretty quickly, it might suffice. Again, but then we have to build out a whole bunch of UI on top of it, which again, the library is not, like, it's more meant to be as a component, and they kind of clearly state that and I don't think there's current place plans to provide the UI as well. But overall, it's very simple to get started and pretty quickly, and it's very impressive project, kind of put together by a team of 2. So when React PDF is best? So if you're working with a React project and your documents are quite simple, you can probably just kind of plug and play React PDF. Also, if you're going to be building UI yourself, your design team has very specific vision of how you want to kind of make it, you know, how you want to display your PDF document, you know, inside of your React app, then this library is probably pretty good for you. Again, there's some issues with it. They're either coming from Pdfjs rendering, or it's just some of the things that you have to set up, and kind of like the textware issue. But yeah, otherwise it's pretty good, very impressive project. Okay, so the next thing that we want to kind of go ahead and take a look at is Pdfgs. So Pdfgs is actually what's powering React PDF library. And again, documentation is available on the project website. And if we go to their website, we can see that there's not really an npm package that we can kind of simply pull in. It's more of a you kind of download the latest build of the Pdfgs. So what I did, I downloaded the build from Pdfgs website, and I placed it inside of my public folder inside of my React app. And I have the build and I have the web. So the build comes with the Pdfgs rendering engine and the worker, and the web comes with viewer UI as well. What I did next inside of kind of my functional component here, I'm just spinning up an iframe, and I'm pointing the source of the iframe to my static resource, and I'm kind of, as a parameter here, I'm passing in the file. So let's kind of compare apples to apples and render out sample PDF. So as you can see here, it renders out the PDF. Let's take a look if it does have the same selection issues. And as you can see here, I'm moving my cursor, but I'm still kind of getting that flashing when I'm selecting text. And it's a little bit frustrating, especially if you're trying to select specific string. You know, half the time you're not going to select it properly. But it does come with a nicer UI, so you don't need to worry about building out your own UI. You can kind of save a lot of time and just kind of provide the more consistent experience inside of the browser. Now, there's still kind of very limited feature set available of what can actually be done, and I believe the zoom actually taps out at 1000. Okay, so that's fine. So let's actually try a little bit different file, a little bit bigger file as well. So we gonna load Income Tax Act, and let's see how that looks. Okay, so it's just kind of loading the document. Okay, so it finished loading the document. And here what I want to demonstrate is that it's pretty smooth. I'm really enjoying the scrolling on this. Instead of kind of using the browser search, we actually have a built-in search that we can leverage. And there's kind of different search modes available, kind of highlight all, match case, and whole word, which is, again, nice to see. And we're going to search for the word that actually kind of has a break in it, and let's see how it does with it. So as I'm searching through the document, as you can see, it's not really picking it up. So let's actually go back and see if we can kind of, okay, there's the word retirement. Maybe let's search for retirement, and it's going to demonstrate retirement. As you can see that the search only giving us full results and never giving us results that have a break inside of them. So potentially it's missing some of the information. So just remember this, we searched for the word retirement and it returned 566 matches. We're going to use the same document and we're going to search for the same word and kind of see how many matches return using a different library. So for the next library, we're going to check out, it's fairly new player. It's called Pdfgs Express. So it does leverage Pdfgs as a rendering engine underneath, but it uses kind of a different UI and actually comes as an NPM library that we can simply pull into our application. So inside of the app.js, we're importing the web viewer from PDFTron, Pdfgs Express, and then we just need a viewer reference where we're going to mount our viewer on. And after that, we provided a path to the static resources where we placed kind of any dependencies that it needs. And then we're going to pass it a sample PDF. Okay, so here we have PDFGS Express in front of us, and it does use PDFGS rendering engine underneath. So first thing I want to check is how is selection on this one. So I'm going to go ahead and start selecting the text. Okay, and as you can see here, there's no flashing going on, and it's actually kind of very nice. There's no jumping around the cursor. It does follow it nicely, although it did run off here a bit, but that's okay. But something else this library offers right out of the box is support kind of for highlights. So as we can see that we actually have full PDF specification of annotations built out, and kind of collaboration UI where I can start kind of commenting on the specific highlight. Now, this is super nice because potentially it's already speeding up our efforts in development by not only providing pretty slick UI for kind of navigation, thumbnails, document outline, highlighting, there's commenting, there's freehand, there's kind of different collaboration tools that are available, like for example commenting, sorting, filtering, and then also maybe we want to implement some kind of review and approval workflow, and already most of the components pre-built. They do have nice documentation and nice samples available that you can kind of go check out if you need to extend it, customize it. Again, it's pretty good library. And let's see, the next thing I want to do is how well it does with the searching if there are some breaks in the word. And we're gonna, so if you remember last time, we searched with Pdfgs, we searched for the word retirement, and it returned 566 matches. So now we're loading Income Tax Act. By the way, the loading time was pretty good. So 3,278 pages. Now let's go ahead and jump into the searching, and I'm gonna search for the word retirement. And let's see how many cases it found. Okay, so far we've got 8. And here it actually returns a bit of an ambient string, or kind of sentence, couple words before and after it, just to kind of show us a little bit of a context, which is nice because then I don't have to jump to every specific page. I can just kind of clearly see it. And as you can see here, this is the word I was looking for. It did pick up the retirement word even with a break. So in total, there's 638 mentions of the retirement. And if you compare those numbers, 566 to 638, there's quite a bit of difference. And especially if our app does rely on people searching inside of the document, that seems like quite a bit of a difference. For the library that we want to kind of support all of what we had previously, but we want to add more capabilities like redaction, rendering more complex documents, or provide a little bit more of a document editing experience like page manipulation, merging documents, or even support of other file formats other than PDFs, because it's nice to have everything in a PDF, but sometimes users are uploading a whole bunch of other formats like docx, PowerPoint, Excel spreadsheets, images, videos. It could be pretty much anything and everything. And we want to ensure that we don't turn them away and provide same consistent experience. So that's where Pdftron Web Viewer shines. If we go to Pdftron sample side of our app.js, we can see it's very similar to PDFGS Express. So you can kind of follow this, and as we can see here, that we have the reference to the viewer where we're going to be mounting our viewer on. The signature looks exactly the same, so we're just kind of pointing into the path with the static resource available here. Again, I included a post-install script that you can do where it kind of runs and moves those resources for you. And we're loading the same sample PDF originally. So our app is now running. And again, this is the same UI as Pdfgs Express. And the UI is actually is available on the GitHub. So you can kind of jump in, take a look at how each component is built. You can actually kind of fork it and change, kind of look and feel of each component. So you can see that there's action button, annotation pop-ups, bookmarks, color palette, and again, you can really kind of make it your own. There is a whole bunch of different APIs available to kind of hide and show different elements, change the behavior, change the themes, change the colors. But if you really kind of want to dive in deep and kind of customize this UI to your needs, you can definitely do so. It's available on GitHub. Now back in our React app, first thing I like to do is kind of the selection handle. So as we can see here, we're selecting the document, and it does provide us pretty accurate selection box. It does a little bit of flashing, but there is no run over to the next line here. So I think out of all of them, this is the most accurate text selection box. And again, the same annotation specs is available, but now we have a couple more features that were not available in Pdfjs Express, where we can actually start kind of editing the actual PDF document, and we can crop the PDF here. We can also navigate to the thumbnail controller, and as we can see here, we can kind of rotate individually pages, and it's not just kind of rotating the view or inside of the viewer, but it's actually changing the underlying PDF. And again, Pdfgs and Pdftron's proprietary engine, because this is what Pdftron WebViewer is using. It's using a proprietary engine. One other thing that I mentioned about where Pdftron WebViewer really shines is the ability not only to load multiple formats like PDF, MS Office, images, videos, and others, but also the ability to load really complex drawings. So for example, as you can see here, we can kind of keep zooming in, and I know there's going to be kind of high definition detail, but I just don't know what zoom level it is at. So I can actually use marquee zoom to kind of zoom in on that specific region, and as you can see that there's a lot more detail is still inside of the document, and we wouldn't be able to see that kind of detail if we weren't able to kind of keep zooming in and go past 2,399%. And I actually wanted to kind of compare side by side and show the kind of the Pdfgs here. So Pdfgs, same kind of region. As you can see that, let's kind of try to get and see if we're able to get the same kind of level of fidelity, or the image is not going to be able to kind of render out. And in those kind of construction application, the thickness of the line could actually mean, how much concrete to pour, or how much kind of, resources to spend to solve this specific problem. And as we can see here, that after a certain amount of zoom, it just kind of stops through rendering, and I'm kind of losing that detail of quality, the one that I can get here with Pdftron's WebViewer. So I do hope you enjoyed this presentation. If you do have any questions or comments, please post them in the chat. This video is also going to be available on Pdftron's YouTube channel, where you can kind of go and comment, and I'll try to get back to you and answer any of your specific questions. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.